What's up, friends? Welcome back to another episode of NFT 365. And as many of you have learned, I went from maybe, let's just say, artistically challenged or artistically denying that I had any artistic ability other than the blessing of storytelling using my mouth. And I discovered AI art and then I kind of dove in, and now I've been selling collections. I have 2 collections that are live now. We sold out some pieces. And my primary tool through this entire journey, pun intended, has been Midjourney. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to create a podcast YouTube video to kind of walk through, talk a little bit about, what does it take to create the in Midjourney? What are some of my best practices and things that kind of exist? And felt like it was a great way to do that was to bring Delphykat on our team onto the podcast. And she's played around with some of Midjourney. She gets to hear all of the nuances that I share in Midjourney. But it'll kind of allow us to have some back and forth. She can ask some questions, probably that most of you will have about AI art, and we'll kind of go from there. So with that being said, Delphi, welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks. This is great. I've been looking forward to doing this episode. I know we've had it kind of in the works for a while. I think a lot of us have been on this journey with you where you've been exploring your artistic side and using these tools to create some art. And it's like a black box to me, to be honest. Like, I've played around a little bit with Midjourney, but there's these things called prompts, and there's all these different ways that you can ask the tool to provide output for you. And I've just been really interested in like how that looks and what you've learned along the way. And somebody who wants to just dabble or get started or experiment a little bit with it, whether they're artistic or not, I think this could be really useful. So I thought maybe we could just go kind of one step at a time and take someone through, i.e. you take me through the process of creating art on Midjourney.
That sounds like a plan. And I just want to qualify as well for those listening and those watching. I'm still learning. A lot of my practices are what works for me. I did start back on July 18th of this past year inside of Midjourney. Now I had gone into Midjourney and played in the actual in their actual server that Midjourney has, but I didn't actually start creating myself on my account until July 18th. But with that being said, I do have the receipts, and I've now created a little over 27,000 plus pieces of art with this entire tool, which has been a lot of fun. A lot of different creative styles, a lot of things that I've tested out. And one thing that I think is interesting in this, Delphi, and I think it'll kind of tie back into even like what your background is and what your role is. Like, I remember when you were asking me, like, you're like, hey, we jumped in Midjourney, and you're like, what about like image weights, and what about seeds, and what about these different commands? And I will tell you, like, I was like, I don't know much about them right now, because I was trying to get into like this artistic creative flow, but I did feel like it would be about time. And so part of the reason we held off on doing this was I felt like I needed to have time to understand my own creative spaces, also understand the tool. The tool has also changed a lot. But before we dive into that, Delphi, your background isn't art per se, but so just for those that are listening, I'm gonna be explaining it and kind of breaking it down, but give us a little of your background so people understand kind of where we're both coming from on this.
Well, my background definitely is not artistic. I mean, besides playing a couple of instruments growing up as a kid, I mean, I've been hardcore science and math kind of my whole life. I was always kind of the brainy student in the front of the class per se. And so exploring anything artistic is really out of my wheelhouse. And, right now I work in healthcare, but I've been intrigued by your story of just not feeling artistic, but yet finding this avenue to explore. And I feel like with my you know, abilities, I guess you could say, in tech, and most of us in Web3 have at least some sort of abilities in tech. Maybe this could be a way that I could explore an artistic side of my own. But you know what's interesting though, and what's a little bit funny is that I know there's a difference between us. And there's a difference between us because you kind of jumped in head first or feet first or whatever first, and you just started using the tool, and you're like, I don't care if I don't know how to use it, I'm just gonna like pound the keyboard and figure it out. And whereas I was like basically like opening the manual, and I was like, well, what about this prompt, or what about this command, or what about, before I even, like hours I was reading the manual online before I even touched the cursor. And you were laughing at me, I remember. And so that's a bit of a difference between us, because that I want to learn before I even try, whereas you have been learning by trying. And so anyways, I just think that's an interesting observation. I don't know if anyone out there can relate to either of us, but we have a difference in
it's a
our
little bit
approach.
of, it's a little bit of both of us willing to kind of, experiment. We just approach things kind of differently. And it's, it's definitely one of the advantages that I feel like that I usually have. Like I might not need to be perfect, or kind of just explore out there. And there's a lot of different tools, right? I've been exploring, playing with different tools. But I think it's also interesting, for those that don't know, like Delphi helps on our team. Pretty much every guest that's been booked, Delphi has worked all that magic, the coordination, also a lot of the back end of my speaking business. So not only on the medical side, she's in there, and been in the NFT space as a collector. And anyone that's been in our Discord is very familiar with you, Delphi, and kind of all of that approach. So I think this will be fun. So for those that are Midjourney, although there is a website that you can actually view your content on. You can share your content on. I'll put a link for anyone that wants to go look at my Midjourney account, public account that you can view. The actual creation lives inside of Discord. And I will say they have, I believe last time someone had actually mentioned it on one of the, I guess it was on a Twitter space, but they actually run the busiest, most heavy used Discord in all of Discord. So they have the most used Discord. But what's nice about it is you don't have to have your own Discord to use the tool. So you can actually go into their Discord, click on one of the channels, and simply build a prompt or see other people building prompts directly inside of Discord. So they have lots of channels, newbie channels. They have different chats going on. They do a AMA on a regular basis, which is really nice. So like you're just getting started, yes, you're going to need to be in Discord, but you don't have to know all the ins and outs of Discord. Really, all you have to know is how to use a backward slash to start your prompt, and then kind of getting started there. But I will tell you, once you're kind of like wanting to go a little bit more into playing, you're going to want to set up your own server, and your own server is free. There's no cost to that. But you're gonna go create new server, and then you can actually add the bot to your server and do the exact same things you would in the Midjourney Discord. So I will tell you, I played around in the Midjourney Discord, the regular Discord, probably for almost a month, looking at what other people were doing. It's kind of nice because you can see exactly what the prompts are that others are using. You can even you can even build on theirs. And then you can jump into the discussion. They also do something really cool where they do like a topic of the day, and they give you kind of inspiration and ideas. But I think for this part, we'll jump into the server that I created way back is probably end of July, where I do all of my creating is in my own Discord server. Like I said, Discord servers, they don't cost any money to create. You just create it. You just create a channel. And then you just add the bot to the channel, and then you're off and running. So, Delphi, I think you played around both in the made Midjourney, and also, of course, having access to my server. And that's actually the nice thing as well, is you don't have to have your own server, right? If I can add others to this server, and we can all create together, but we have individual accounts because it's tied to our Discord account.
So how do you get an account with Midjourney? Like, you always joke about how much money you spend in your membership and everything. Like, do you go to the website and register for an account there and then come back to Discord? Or how does that work?
So you can do it either way, but Discord will send you to the website, which is just kind of the way. So in the actual channels, if you're in one of the channels, you can just hit /subscribe, and so /subscribe will actually pop up a link, and that link will send you to the subscribe page on their website. And when that pops up, it's just going to say log in with your Discord, and then you put in your amount that you want to actually pay for. And so you can use the free version. I can't remember what so like there's the subscribe page, and it's just going to take me to a link. And we're not going to share that side, but I'll at least be able to. There's different plan levels. There's a basic plan for $10 a month. There's a standard plan for $30 a month, or there is a pro plan for $60 a month. And I usually blow through the pro plan in about 10 days, so I have to keep adding hours to my plan. But I will tell you, for most people, we'll talk a little bit about the settings. You can actually set up the settings to where it doesn't burn through a lot of them, or you could just use the free time all the time, and that's the relaxed mode. So really, what you're paying for is the speed of the rendering and the most high end, the ability to upscale to the max. So, which I will tell you, just something I've learned. You're not going to want to upscale to the max pretty much close to ever, because most of the rendering prior to that is not needed. But we'll explain what that means in a second. But so there is the free plan, basic plan, standard, pro plans. And what's nice is you can sign up, connect your Discord account, you sign up, put your card in there, and then it actually will bill you each month, and you can actually see what your subscription is, what your hours are. So I'm showing here on the screen, I have the pro subscription. Currently I have it set to fast mode, which is the mode you have to pay for. You can pay extra for private mode. So only on the pro plan can you get private mode, where not every one of my prompts, not every one of my images is shared with everyone. So you can pay for that. And then it tells me hours remaining if I have any jobs in the queue. So you can see right now, it actually says right there, lifetime images that I've actually created on just this account. I have two accounts. Is 24,750 images over just in computing hours, 364.8 computing hours alone. And so, this is just kind of a snapshot of what your info is for your subscription.
Wow. That's a lot of images.
Yeah. And I will say, part of it was I didn't understand. I will say, I kind of wish that I had the video we're creating right now back about 4 months ago, because a lot of the things I was doing was really repetitive and over again, re-rendering. And I didn't realize that there were some better ways to rewrite scripts, some other things some functionality. When I started, there's a different version, and there was 3 less settings. And I will tell you, my 3 favorite settings are the 3 new settings. And if I would have had those early on, I bet you that total images would have been half, because before we had to do a lot of things where you either rewrote the whole prompt or you just kept building upon it. Now I can actually remix and edit a prompt that I've already actually run once. I can just edit a simple font and then rerun it, which saves me a mass amount of time, also a mass amount of creating images. So just for those that are overwhelmed, don't worry. I was kind of.
It's good. We can learn from your mistakes.
Exactly. So you mentioned kind of prompts, and I think, and I'll go to a kind of a fresh channel. In Discord, the backward slash, or I hate backward slash or forwards, because like it's backwards for some, but it depends on how you're reading it or writing it. It's the slash where the bottom of it is on the left and the top of it is on the right. It's the one next to your shift button on the right-hand side of your keyboard. But if you hit that slash button, it'll pull up all of the quote-unquote bots, which is just the app. It'll pull up all of the functionalities for whichever apps you haven't installed on that server. So on this server that I created, which I fancily named iSocialFans, I just have Midjourney there. I have no other bots, no other anything. Actually, I think just myself, you, and maybe one other person has access to this server. But by sitting at backslash, I can actually see all of the commands that exist. So for those that are listening, You don't have to memorize all the commands. You don't have to memorize actually all the functions. Midjourney actually has a great notes page that we'll provide a link to that actually gives you a lot of really cool shortcuts. And I'll just tell you, I've created all those images, 28,000 images. I've sold all these NFTs. I referenced it yesterday. I went to their notes guide because I couldn't remember the syntax in one of their functionality. But you can do everything from ask a question. You can change the settings here. You can use help. But the main prompt, the main one that you would use for creating art on a pretty much 90% of the time, and I'll explain why I use another one partially, is the image prompt. So you just click the image prompt, and now it's up for creating the prompt itself. So
you mean imagine, right?
Yeah. So it's imagine, and then it says prompt, and then there's a space. And what's beautiful here is when you're starting out, you can just literally say a sentence or a word, right? And you can drop that here in the prompt in clear text without any of the things that I'll talk about what I use at the end. So at the beginning, a lot of times you can simply say a beach scene, right? And I'm just going to say beach scene as my prompt. I'm going to hit enter. And then what it's going to do is you'll notice, and explain this for everyone on the podcast, it adds some of the default parameters to the end of the prompt automatically. So every time right now, the default is V4, which is their version 4. It's adding automatically a seed number, and it's automatically adding a quality, which I will explain. But you'll notice what it does is it immediately starts rendering, and it'll show you, it'll start at 0%, and right now it's at 62%, and you're starting to get a glimpse of the images. So, and what's nice with Midjourney compared to a lot of the other programs is Midjourney will always give you 4 boxes. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2 at the top, 3, 4, kind of like a Brady Bunch square. Every time you run a prompt, an initial prompt, it always gives you 4 to select from. The goal for that one, because I didn't use any I didn't go detailed, I didn't add anything to it. It's going to give you usually 4 very, let's just say, very wide range basics of what you put in there, because it wants you to decide which of these 4 is closest to what you wanted, and then you can actually select that and then build upon that. So you'll see here on the screen, and for those that are listening, it brought up 4 different beach scenes. One with a bunch of umbrellas with a little bit of the ocean in the back. The second one with an umbrella and a person sitting in a chair without pretty much any ocean. Another one with kind of palm trees, but no chair, no umbrella, no sign of the ocean. And then a fourth one, which kind of has like a gray functionality with an umbrella, a little bit of dust and a cloud. And so these are the 4 that are given with every prompt. And then underneath every prompt, you're going to have these 4 buttons underneath, which is U1, U2, U3, U4, and then a reroll script, and then V1, V2, V3, V4. What those mean in the most basic sense is it means upscale image number 1 or upscale image number 2. So those, and the numbers go across. So it's number 1 in the top left, number 2 in the top right, and number 3 in the bottom left, number 4 in the bottom right. So you can either upscale it, which means it's gonna improve that image, and you're gonna work just with that one image, or you can say the version, the V button, which is actually gonna take that same image. So if I pick V2, it's gonna take image number 2, but it's gonna give me 4 versions of image number 2. So you might like the image description, but you're like, wait, I hope they add ocean to it. Rather than having to do a whole nother prompt, I can just hit V2, and we can see what V2 will actually pop up with, and see maybe it's going to create add an ocean. So I hit V2 in this example, and now it's rendering just like it did the first time. And because I use the V, it's going to give me another 4 squares, but you're going to notice all 4 of these squares are very similar to each other based on the one that I selected above. Does that kind of make sense in that piece of it?
Yeah, so the V stands for variations, and the U stands for upscaling. Is that right?
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. And sorry, my dog's whining in the background here.
Can't hear it. You're good.
So, okay. So can you go back to what those defaults are, those default settings that you had set so that V4S, those settings, and why you picked those settings and what those mean?
So inside of the server, you can, and just like everything, if you want to check your set, you want to manage your settings, you just hit /settings, and then it'll actually pull up your settings for you on the screen. So each user customizes their own settings. So even when I'm in the other Discords, these settings are tied to my user account. So I can use version 1, 2, 3, or 4, or the Ninja mode, which are the actual like engines. When I first started using Midjourney, the first day I ever opened it, there was only 2 versions. There was Midjourney version 1, Midjourney version 2. Quickly, I think it was right there in July, they added version 3. And version 3 allowed much better clarity, much more depth in the images. But once V4 came out, V4, which is the one I use most of the time now, is very realistic based on the image that the prompt that you're putting in. But let's say you don't want it to be so like realistic, photorealistic. You want things to be more opaque or more variation. You can use V3, and then V2 and V1 also have their own reasons for using them. You can check out the documentation for that. But like for me, and for anyone, if you don't go in and select right now, like let's say you don't hit your settings, no matter when you very first starting out, MJ version 4 will be what you're set for default. And just to clarify, the Ninja mode is actually what is it called? Not Animoji, like Dragon Ball Z. Why is that? I'm having a brain. Like the Japanese art.
Anime.
So that version, it will almost always give you an anime style image. So inside of Midjourney, I have those are kind of like my 5 options, and then each other set below that has different options. So you have a different option for not like, okay, what is the quality that I want, which you'll see like the -Q. I have it set to high quality, which costs more money to run, which when I said earlier that there's better ways to actually save your money. If you're learning this out, I recommend just setting it to base quality or even half quality. So the images won't have as much clarity, but you can still see what it is. It just won't look amazing HD when you're downloading it. And you can always change these afterwards and rerun the same prompt with a higher variance.
I see.
So you have the quality, and then you have the style, and then you have your decision on type of upscale. And then the last thing you have is the modes. So you can go public or private, or you can go fast or relaxed. And then one of the newest features they have, which I love, is the remix mode, which I toggle that on and off, and we'll demonstrate that a little bit later. But just for those that are, like when you start off, you'll have these already set for you default. And I will tell you another mistake I made, because I have ADHD and I have a problem with tweaking everything, is once I found the settings feature, I went and changed things. And I wish I did not, because then I couldn't tell if was I getting better at prompting, or was my prompts improving, or did the just output change? So I will just tell for anyone that's not into beta testing or computer science or regular science, when you're learning, try to change as little variables as you can so you can hone in on your prompt writing skills. And then once you hone in on that, now you can go in and maybe change the quality or change some of these settings and start to tweak with some of the other ones. But this, the beauty of this tool, which I will tell you, is that when you get started, it sets you on the defaults, and the defaults for the most part are really great to run. And I think it was multiple months that I was using the tool without changing any of these defaults from the beginning. So hopefully that helped.
Yeah, absolutely. The only one I'm not sure of is the seed. There was a seed default there, S750. What does the seed mean again?
So the seed is the tool's way of remembering that exact prompt correlated to the image. So it's like their storage identification number. So if you want to be able to do a seed and be able to use that same exact prompt later on, you can set your own seed every single time, or you let the tool pick it. And then what you just have to do afterwards is you just have to use one of the emojis. And I can literally just hit this emoji reaction, hit the envelope button, which will then send me the message, send me a DM. And then what you'll notice is the seed for the images and the jobs that I ran is actually given to me. So a lot of people are like, you should do the seed every time. That way you know what it is to call. To me, that's adding complexity. I don't do the seed every time, but if I want to go back and reuse a prompt or an image and get the exact same output, right? Because this is a clarifying point for everybody that's listening. If you run the same prompt multiple days or different days, you're going to get different results. And maybe certain ones are super detailed, are going to get very close. But if you want the exact output of something you've done previously, maybe because you want to tweak it, maybe because you want to adjust it or build upon it, you're going to have to use that seed phrase. And what you just simply go into. So like if that was the seed phrase for the ones that I wanted, I would just copy the seed phrase, and then inside of the Discord channel, I would actually just have it. Where's the setting? I would just hit the show, or actually the show. I need the job ID. So I just use the job ID, and then it will actually show me that exact job. So you can use the seed. And I would say I started using the seed more now that I'm more advanced, I guess, or more dialed in. But it's actually going to show me the exact same job above, right? Because I just put that in, compared to if I used, beach scene. Again, we know that beach scene would not, not give me the same results, even if I used those exact same, external factors. So those are just some of the things that play in. I will tell you, I didn't research seed or weighting or changing of the settings for multiple months, and I was creating content and that people were blown away by. So just for those that might feel like a little bit overwhelmed, a lot of these things give you great options, and that's why this is where I think creating AI art is a skill set, right? Prompt, they call it being a prompt poet, but I think prompt engineering, understanding, like I can change one setting, and it's going to change the results completely, which will change how I edit, which will change the output. So the beauty of this is, like, even though we could all decide to use the exact same prompt in general, almost all of us would get a very different output at the end.
Wow, that's interesting that we could run the same thing on a different day or at a different time of day or a different person, and it could come up with a different output. That's almost a little bit eerie to me.
Well, because remember, and this is a key for AI. AI is constantly learning with us, right? AI is not a tool that we're just using it. We're creating images together. And so AI every minute is getting smarter with every image that is created that this is pulling from, right? And so each time someone's creating an image, it's adding that to its database. So us adding a prompt tomorrow, or when someone's listening to this podcast, the amount of images that have been added to their library is infinite. So now it's going to give you different results, because AI is getting, we can't say smarter. AI is adding more variables to the database, right? It's only as smart as we actually put into it. And I will say, Midjourney, some of the AI engines are kind of like wild, wild west. They let everything go. Other ones have certain things. Midjourney does not allow for anything close to not safe for work content. Like I even put crop top for one of the images because I wanted the girl to be wearing a crop top, and it said violation of terms. You can't enter the word crop top. So you can't add, there's no 18 plus content added to the server, but there are other tools that allow that. So to each their own on what they're building. But that's kind of like, I would say that like the setup and kind of the management of creating this kind of Midjourney art from this standpoint.
Right. So then what do you do when you get to this point? So say you did some variations on V2, and let's say you have a favorite, and then what do you do?
Yep. So which one you pick which one, 1, 2, 3, or 4 that's on the screen.
Okay. Well, I can't see them too well.
You can click on it to go a little more full screen.
Okay. Well, let's go with 1 because it shows a nice ocean there.
All right. So we're going to pick U1, which is the upscaling one. So now it's just taking that one image. So it started with 4. We picked the one we liked of the 4, but we wanted variations of that 4. And then once we've liked which ones of those variations. Now, if you didn't like any of these variations, but you still think they're close, I could hit this reroll button next to it, which will re-roll that script against this again and give me another 4, just like the ones above. So with that being said, we hit U1, which is upscale 1. And right now it says we're upscaling image number 1 with beach scene. We're waiting to start. And just for clarity too, it does take anywhere from like 30 seconds to 90 seconds per image. And if you're using fast mode, of course, it goes faster. If you're using relaxed mode and you're using it during off hours, I may or may not have been creating images after midnight last night because I'm slightly addicted to the creating of these prompts. It was actually, I kept it in relaxed mode to save my fast mode hours, and it was returning images in 25 seconds, like really quickly. I will say this is also because there's so many people using Midjourney. Midjourney has a tendency sometimes to go down or up, but I will tell you they are great at giving, they have a status piece in their server, and I can jump in there and check the status of it. It's funny enough, we went to record this video and it was actually down. They were dealing with a bug, but it came back up. So just in that time I was talking, it now gave you image number 1, and you'll notice it's upscaled. So upscaling it not only makes it a higher resolution, but it cleans up some of the details, but it doesn't clean up all of the details. Now, that is what you would do on the next phase that when it comes up. So once you've moved into the upscaling portion of this creation process, it's now going to give you different options across the bottom. So your options now are make variations, light upscale redo, beta upscale redo, and then there's a button to click to the web, and then there's some emojis underneath it. Now, the emojis are both for Midjourney and for yourself. So if you're like, I did not like what it gave me as a result, you can actually say the frowny face emoji, which is teaching AI, which I use these almost on a regular basis because I want AI to know, oh, hey, that was, sometimes I'll be like, superhero jumping out of a building. And I'm like, what is that? That's not what it was, right? So I'll hit that downward one. And then if you want to like say, hey, I love this, or you vote up it, and then it'll actually save it to your account. And so that's actually how I actually save some of the images to go back and reference later. As I'll just hit the little heart eye emoji, and it'll tell me, okay, you heart-eyed it, and then it'll be stored on my account for me to reference later. But the 3 options that matter for us at this moment, based on this prompt, are make variations, light upscale, and beta upscale.
Okay, so when do you ask it to do something in a certain style? For example, like you always like to do like neon colors, and you put in certain styles. So when would you ask it to do that?
So this is I like that you asked that. This wasn't planned on that ask. So for the most part, you're going to do that on your initial prompt. And up until recently, that was your only time. So if I wanted to add neon colors, which is my favorite, I don't think I've done a prompt without the word neon in it. Maybe just a handful of times. My own personal, flavor. For the most part, I would just go in and build a new prompt, right? So I would say beach scene, comma, neon colors, and hit enter again. But one of the features that I mentioned, which was added, was, remember back in settings, I said they had this remix mode. So remix mode is something that you toggle on or toggle off. So if I toggle on remix mode and go back to my image, anytime you click a variation, so either V1, V2, V3, V4, or make variations, it's going to pop up the button for you to edit your prompt, and it's going to actually make the variations based on my editing. So I'm going to hit make variations on that one, and you'll notice now it brought up my original prompt. And so I can actually add comma, and I will explain a comma and not comma, neon colors, and then we'll say comma 4K photography. So I can add that right here to the prompt. Now, anything that you're adding as far as like descriptors, they're going to be in the first section of your prompt. And then you're going to have what are going to be the variation, the pieces at the end, which are really like the code for whatever settings you want to set. And those are set up with double dashes. So anything is dash, so --V is the version, and then you put a space. And so if I wanted to change this and say, give me this in version 3, I could actually just change that to V3 there, and it would now run the V3 engine. Even though my default setting is set to V4, I could send this prompt to only look at V4. So I could actually edit these things in here as well. And I will tell you, one of my favorite ones, and the one that I use the most, and this is probably one of the coolest things that I like about Midjourney, is not only does the image change based on the words and things you're putting in, but the size of the output that you want will drastically change. Drastically. I can't even stress how much. And so I love, and it's funny because it's just like this in photography, and my daughter is always giving me a hard time. I love landscape, and I love 9:16 images. So I like things that are super wide or super tall in image form. You can actually customize that per one that you use. But by default, if you don't tell it which kind of dimensions you want, it'll always give it to you in square. And up until recently, migrating something from square to like landscape afterwards was not a very good transition. So you almost have to rerun the prompt. Now they've kind of adjusted that. But what they do, what that prompt is it's AR, which is aspect ratio. And then you just put space, and then you put the parameters that you want. And they have like the ones that you can use, but like the one that I use the most for a landscape image is 3x2. So if I wanted to, if like for this beach scene, I would want it 3x2. So it's going to be extra wide, kind of widescreen for your phone or widescreen for your laptop. If I wanted this to be vertical, my preferred one in vertical is 2x3. So almost all of the ones, if you bought any of my NFTs, pretty much in the last 3 months, it's either been in 2x3, so it's like a tall portrait, or 3x2 mode, which is widescreen. And I will say the other thing just to know is that anytime Midjourney adds like new engines or new features, they usually limit the amount of options you have because they're still tweaking a lot of the back end on like sizing. So when I first started on V4, which is their current engine, you couldn't change the aspect ratio. It always had to be in square because they were like, we just want people to use it, test it in square mode. And then once we add the other things, because it puts more, it requires more GPU on the back end to run all of these additional things. But with that being said, so we just edited it, this one that we had already run. So it was beach scene. We added comma neon colors, comma 4K photography, which I'll explain like why I did that one. And then we just added the aspect ratio to the end. And then I'm just going to hit submit. And remember, because we hit the make variation button, it's going to give me an output of 4 again, right? Anytime you're using a variation, well, I guess it's not anytime. There are a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, anytime you're doing that. So if you remember, I used 2x3. So it's now making it it's not only adding the neon colors and 4K photography, which are the things I added, but it's also changing the aspect ratio. And now it's a much taller, output than it was previously. So now you can actually see the 4 images are more of like a vertical setup than they were square before. Very similar image, but now I have 4 variations with the neon colors added to it. And it's going to also include the 4K photography piece that I added as well.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's kind of neat to have that moment of anticipation of like, oh, what is it going to put out? Right.
That's my favorite part.
That's
and
the fun,
you can go in and re-roll and re-add. So if you just start, like, the way I learned was I didn't really edit the prompts much. I would start with a command. Like I would try to be a little bit, I pretty much a sentence description, right? So I would say beach scene, which was one of the ones, my favorite ones to do is the beach scenes. That's why I would say beach scene, beautiful, beautiful sun. The sun is out. It is a beautiful day. Palm trees and waves crashing on the shore, comma, neon colors. That was kind of like my initial prompt. And I wouldn't edit that. And I would just use these functions here. And so I would go in and I would say, okay, you know what? I want to light upscale this. And so I would light upscale the one that we selected, which remember was the original prompt. And so now it's going to upscale and add light. So light upscale is lightening the image. It's also increasing the kind of the depth and the dexterity in the actual image by light upscaling it. But also remember, every time you upscale, there's like a fine area where you might upscale something that it's so defined that it becomes blurry and whitewashed. or it might be you need to get it to there before a lot of the details actually exist. And so what I was able to do from that original one that you had selected was we just hit light upscale. And you'll notice I still have remix mode on, but it doesn't prompt you to change the prompt unless you're using one of the variation sides. So if you're using light upscale or beta upscale, it's simply going to give me this one image that we have here. So it's at 85% now. And you'll notice the clarity of the people. The image itself is going to be lighter in colors. Some of the colors are going to have more quality, but you're also going to notice it's going to give me a couple new buttons that are going to be added. So once you initially light scale an image, the first time you light scale something, it now adds some options. So now that something's been upscaled, either light upscaled or beta upscaled based on my settings, I now have, once again, make variations, which we know what that one's going to do. It's going to give you 4 based on the image that you have. But now we have a new one, which is called detailed upscale redo, which personally is one of my favorite ones for images that aren't 3D rendered or not like CGI or Octane rendered. So if you're not trying to go for that like very cinematic 3D look, I almost take everything to the detailed upscale location, because what that does is it really does add some really great detail to your image. The also thing that's nice about in detailed upscale is that you can, even if you're using the free version, you can use the detailed upscale in your tool. And then the other button that it gives you that was not there before, which is another good thing to know, is the remaster button. So remember that we had like the re-roll or remaster when there was 4. Well, you can remaster from one image. But the interesting thing about this is you can't remaster an image till it's been upscaled at least once. And that's because there's GPU, so it's enabling this. So oftentimes I won't really like an image. I'll be like, you know what? This image isn't really one that I love. Like I'm not in love with this image, but I want to see what it would remaster it to. I want to see what AI would take what I've adjusted and what it'll give me. So if you think about it this way, it's going to take your prompt and the image, throw it back into the algorithm, and push you out something based on your image that you've just upscaled. So it's a little bit closer to what you wanted, but not exactly. It'll do that via remaster. So sometimes I will upscale something I don't like just so I can remaster it to see what AI is going to teach me. And this is where I learned a lot. I said before, so what I would do is I would light upscale, and if I wanted to, I'm like, you know what, this is actually nice, I would just hit the detailed upscale. So now it's going to make a lot of clarity. It's going to really add some finite details. And then from the detailed one, I can decide to remaster, or I could also remaster from the one above that as well. So right now it's going through, it's starting at 13%. And you'll notice each time you're moving up, it's going to take a little bit longer to actually create the output, but it's also really honing in. And I will just say, this is also when you'll notice some of the flaws in an image that you might not have noticed earlier on, where all of a sudden you're like, that person only has 3 fingers. There's not 4
or
fingers.
six legs on a horse or something.
6 legs on a horse, which is one that you and I have done for a while. So usually detailed upscale is one that will kind of give you that like, ooh, like this has more things maybe than I wanted to look at it. And also remember, each time you're taking this image on the journey with you. And so I could have right here hit make variations. And because I'm still in remix mode, I could edit the prompt from here, from this image. But if I go and I now added details, I can still do the same thing. I can hit make variations, but it's going to do it from my most recent image. And if you think of it this way, the prompt is always reading either the image that you have there, or if you don't have an image, it doesn't read anything. And then it's the words you use, and then the settings that you have, the dash settings that you have behind it. And so you'll notice it took a little bit longer for this one to create, but you'll also notice that all of a sudden that you'll see here, there are some like splash marks, right? You'll notice like some granularity. So if we go back up one, so this is the one, you'll notice there's not really any granularity. We're not seeing like speckled paint. And that's because the detailed upscale was almost it rendered it too much. So now it's too upscaled to where you see like some of the, like in the clouds, they'll have like specks of paint because the images is there's so much detail. And just to be clear,
Right.
I know people are going to come at me in the comments and say there's better words to explain all these terms. I'm explaining them as someone that translates geek speak, ADHD guy. I understand you might have specific words and art, but like I'm someone that, hey, this, all of a sudden I rendered this and I'd be like, oh, well, now it has too much detail. And so for me, from this spot,
Right.
what I would often do is I will scroll up and say, okay, if I want to change the prompt from here, I will use the make variations. Or if I want to use the remaster, I will go up to the one that didn't have a lot of that like mistaken detail. Because if you think about this, the computer doesn't see that the clouds now have specks in it. It just knows that you upped the image. And what I've noticed is if I tell the computer to run from here, it's going to have a much different output than if I had one that wasn't as kind of like as granular.
Right.
So what we'll do is we'll hit remaster
Right.
from the one that wasn't as granular. And remember, just for clarity, we're still using off of that prompt that was beach scene beach scene, right? It was just beach scene was that we used. And so when you've upscaled something and then you remaster it, it's going to give you two outputs. So variation.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Remaster is 2. Now remember, remastering, it throws away the seed phrase, the seed that you had, and it just throws it back in there and says, here's the prompt, here's the image that they're working off of. Give me 2 other images that are close. And now you get to work from these 2 images based on what the computer thinks that you wanted. So it still has umbrellas. We can still see the beach in the back, but it kind of changed up where the people are positioned in there, the shadow on the beach, the lighting of it. So it remastered that based on this image here. And so you'll notice that these 2 are similar yet different than that. So the other part of this, I'm going to turn off remix mode just so that we can see this. Let's say you're like, you know what? I like this one, but I really wish there was, it changed the position of the people on the beach, or I really wish there was kind of like a slightly different setup, but I want it based off of this image. Rather than remaster, I can just hit make variations. And remember, make variations.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And now it's going to make variations based on my image. So the difference there, remastering it is almost like throwing it back in there and seeing what it spits out. Make variations is like, hey, this is where you're at. Here are 4 close adjustments to where that's at. And so I love this element of the design process. And I will also just say, like, most of my initial design with an idea, like today, the idea I was working through was work-life balance and having someone that was on that was either walking across a high wire or a balance beam with their happy life on one side and their work life on the other side. That's what the image was I wanted to create this morning when I woke up. What I start out with is just kind of exactly what I just said as the script. And then I just kind of roll with it. And I'll hit make variations. I'll upscale it. I'll hit remaster. And I'll just kind of work through. And all of a sudden, it'll generate something that I'm like, ooh, I like that style. Then I will go in, create a new prompt, and add things like neon color, add the different clarifying things. Like, do I want it to use a certain engine types or certain clarifying components? Do I want it to be cubism? Do I want it to be use cyberpunk as a style guide? So I often don't add all of those let's just say the styling variables. I don't often add that when I initially come up with a prompt in my head, because I want to be like, it's almost like, let me pick the canvas and let me pick the paint brushes and the paint, but let me throw like the beach on there onto the canvas and the umbrella. And now you're like, you know what? I want to add a black outline. I want to add, and so it kind of lets you kind of build the canvas. And then based on that inspiration, I usually then build a prompt that ends up being closer to like the final prompt that I'm actually using. So that's kind of my own creation process. I know everyone has different ones. I know a lot of people that don't really use any of these adjustments until the output is super close to what they want. So maybe people that are more on your side of the fence, Delphi, on the more perfection side of like, ooh, that wasn't what I want, and they just keep editing the prompt. Right. I kind of I want to work with the AI in that sense.
Yeah. Do you ever get frustrated if you have like an idea in your head of like, this is what I want, and I can't get the tool to give me that? Or do you just kind of go with it and work with what the tool gives you?
Every single day, you get frustrated with that
Yeah.
output. But the interesting thing is, I have to ask myself, and this is where how I create is, I look at it and say, like I will tell you, like I mentioned, work-life balance, happiness, and work on both sides. What I'm trying to convey is that it is a choice and a balance that is very impossible. And I want the emotion of this like overwhelming feeling of like it's near impossible to be balanced. But I don't have like exactly, like, I don't have like mountaintop to mountaintop of the high wire. I want the person wearing jeans and a hat. So I don't go to that realm, just my creation, because I want to work with the idea. So that kind of prevents me from having to be like frustrated. I will say, like, I will go in, like, actually, we'll give a shout out to a good friend of ours, Sharp Duck, with the AI apes. And he had asked me, he has a duck project. And he's like, Brian, can you do like a duck with like ghosts around it and like, maybe ducks that are in a cemetery? And I was like, ducks with ghosts around it that are in a cemetery? Like, that's a cool challenge. I've never done that before. I will just tell you, I went in here and I'll find the ducks one that I was doing 2 nights ago. And that's the other nice thing about Midjourney is like all of your history is all stored here in your Discord. So I can actually just even search duck. And then it's going to show me rubber duck at a funeral, neon colors,
At a funeral.
CGI, right? So I will just hit jump, and it's actually going to jump to that spot. And so now I'll close that. So what I will tell you though is it took me a long while because duck and rubber duck, the computer does not like what rubber duck or duck is. It'll give you the most wild variations. And so this is actually a good spot to explain. When you're giving it a prompt, and this is something I've learned let's not say, it's something I've embraced recently. I've been very aware of the ability to weight components of a prompt. But for me, like I've explained for everybody that's out there, the more that you get in like with those finite details to start with, I believe the more frustration that you'll have. So working with it to kind of like craft prompts in the styles that you want, and then going back in, I believe is the better answer. So what you'll notice is that I use commas. Some people use brackets. Some people don't use commas at all. There's like this weird Midjourney like underground scene where people joke like the comma sometimes changes it, but for the most part, the comma doesn't. So if the comma helps you out as someone that to like visualize your prompt, go for it. If you like a space after your comma, go for it. But if you don't have to either, right? So you'll see others that just don't do any spaces at their comma. I don't think those people are human that can, like, if you're gonna put the comma, put the space after it, like, what in the world?
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah, but with that being said, when I'm saying things like duck at a funeral, neon colors, cinematic lighting, 3D render, it uses all of those words equally of importance. So it's going to say, okay, let's, duck, funeral, 3D render, cinematic. So that this is a good example of one that, like what I should say, and this is where we can use it as an example, is what, if the duck is what I care about the most, you can actually add weights to a prompt. And so rather than that comma under, let's say duck, I want the duck to be more important than the funeral. I can hit what are those things called? I don't know what those are called. The colon? Double dots. What are they called? Colon? Not semicolon. Yeah. So it's 2 colons, and then the default weight is always 1. So if I increase the weight, so if I make this : 2, it's now going to give the duck anything to the left of the weight priority 2 to 1 on what's after it. But if I'm like, you know what, I want the funeral to have a little bit more weight than neon colors, cinematic, I can do the : and put 1.5 after it. So the duck will have more weight than the word at funeral, but at funeral will still have more weight than some of the other descriptors. And so you can add, and this is where it gets really fun to kind of come in and tweak. I will just say personally, I play with the prompt for a good while before I add any of these things in there, or if the result is nowhere close to what I want. And so like in this case, I just hit, duck, I weighted it, and we'll kind of see what the end results are. And funny enough, I mentioned before, like work-life balance. Well, what I work myself to is the flood of overwhelm of the water rising in our work from home office is what I was going from. So you'll notice some of the things that I was working off of this prompt was, upside down work off balance. I use a weight here. So this is a very I'm way down the creation process, not there yet, but I'm way down the creation process from that initial one that I started with. But now if you look at the output of this one that we did with duck, funeral, duck weighted the most, funeral weighted second, and then the other ones after, what you'll notice is there's less neon color, there's less cinematic lighting. Duck is forefront and the primary feature, and funeral is there, right? There's like a funeral essence of like dark, but funeral is not prioritized, right? It's not equally weighted to the duck. And so what I will show you now, just from for those that are watching, and we'll kind of explain it for those that are listening, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the exact same prompt, but I'm actually just going to change the version. So duck is going to be rated 1.5, and funeral is now going to be rated 2. So funeral now is getting the priority over the duck. And let's see what 4 images it gets with this. And I will say this part of like the testing and the tweaking is why I love AI art. If you're not someone that likes testing, tweaking, testing, it's so much fun. And you could change things like even removing the word at, because it might not need the word at. Now, removing it might be something good, might not have any component. Maybe I want the funeral to be neon, but not the duck. Well, I can put the word neon before duck. So like all of those things change the output, allow us to tweak. And so like this one's interesting because it still doesn't seem to really want to prioritize the funeral. And it might be because it doesn't understand the word, funeral. To it might be, the database of funeral images are just dark images with dark, writing. It did pull up, one of them has a casket underneath of it. One of it looks to be like kind of like on a gravestone. Another one has flowers, right, which probably is flowers on top of a gravestone. So like what you could even do with like, that I like that it still has the duck. I like that, but you know what? I wanted to add more detail. I can copy that exact same prompt, and this time where the at funeral part, I can say, sitting on a casket with flowers and tombstone, at the funeral. So that's now that entire section is weighted priority. So duck is still a little bit less than funeral, but now I got a little bit more descriptive on what I want the output of that to look like. Once again, I have no descriptors at the end, so I'm not calling out the aspect ratio or any of the other styles. What I like is like once I get the prompt close to like the weights matching and it getting me like generally what I want, then I'll add some of those other things and then really work through it. So now we've just added sitting on a casket with flowers and tombstone at a funeral. And remember, I prioritized that part of the thing 2 to 1.5. But like, let's say I wanted duck to have even less, you could actually go, 0.5, or if I don't want a duck in there at all, which doesn't make sense in this example. But if I didn't want, like, let's say you wanted at funeral, but you don't want a casket, you can actually wait. So put 2 colons after casket and put -1. And so now it's going to try its best to remove a casket. And so you'll notice now on the output, it actually is much more prominent. There is caskets in all 4, right? There are flowers in all 4. There has a kind of that tombstone style to it. And the duck is still there. I will say like the neon colors,
well, there's duck in 3 of them.
yeah. And I'm not even sure what that is. That's a bird of some kind. That's a crow of some sort, right? And because it weighted it less, it's not actually adding, the duck is now less of a priority. So it might have a less chance of getting you the exact duck that you wanted. And you can weight certain things the same and then other things down. So like I'll do that sometimes where I'll weight a couple different things the exact same and then lower the weight of a couple others. But that's kind of a couple of the ways that you kind of tweak and kind of adjust as you go.
That's awesome. So so how do you know what kind of modifiers are even possible? Like, is there a repository somewhere, or is it in the help documents or something like I'm thinking like a certain style of art or a certain type of lighting. Like there's so many possibilities. Like, is there a repository somewhere where you can reference how to build
So
them into the prompt? Or do you just have to
so,
guess what they're called?
so yes, so there are prompt generator websites. There are a lot of different things that you can kind of do from a standpoint of, and the prompt generator websites are actually fairly nice because it'll actually allow you, and we can put in there one of the ones that I really like. But I personally like once you like I actually what this is my way of doing it. Rather than using the prompt generator, I actually put the prompt generator tab open so I know what all my options are. But I build the script still in Discord. But I will tell you the
Right.
thing that I like doing the most, and here I'll share this part of the screen for those that are watching on the video side. The thing I like to do is if you remember I showed you that Midjourney has the website, right? So this is my account, so my own account, so everything that we just created. So if I hit refresh right now, you're going to notice the duck one's going to come up, the beach ones are going to come up. These are all going to be in my account for me to download. I can add them to I can sort them in collections. I can see how they were created. All of that is on the website. It'll take just a second to refresh. But what I really like that they have here, and we'll kind of come back to that. Oh, of course, it came right at the end, is they have a community feed, which the community feed, you can follow people, but the community feed is just aggregated by the entire community. And they will show you the ones that are currently hot, the ones that are newer created that people have like voted and said they like, remember, because you can vote, or the top all-time pieces that have been voted in the collection. And what I love about this, when you ask, the reason I go here is you're like, where do I learn? If I look here and I'm like, what? And this is one of my favorites, like this portrait of an Asian old warrior chief. So what I can do is I can click on it, and then down below it, it's going to tell me all of the descriptors that it used. So if I want my image, maybe I don't want the chief, but I love the contrast in the background. I love the colors in this one. I can actually look at their prompt and say, you know what? I want to use hard rim lighting photography, 50 millimeter portrait photo. And so I would often just copy this and then add it to the end of like the duck prompt. And now the duck prompt is going to take on some of the characteristics from this. Now, some people don't like this idea, but like some people will just take the exact prompt and throw it into Midjourney. Now, remember, because you don't have the seed, because you aren't the one that created this image, it will not be the exact same thing. There's a chance sometimes that it's fairly close, but even if I took this exact, beta portrait, and you can even see like down below, you can actually see like the parent, so it'll show you like kind of like the origin of it was created. And just for clarity, this is one of the most highly ranked images that was built in August, and it is. I mean, this thing is, pretty epic in quality and the colors and the tattoo. I love that it's out of focus in the front and has like that bokeh, side profile, a piece of it. But I can also copy here the full command. I can copy the prompt or even copy the actual job ID and bring that back over to my Discord. Now, for some people, they don't want their stuff to be shared out there, so they will do private mode. And you'll notice I create sometimes in private mode, but at the same time, the reason I do that is I like to kind of, I've noticed a lot of people are following me, my page here on Midjourney, and you can actually just follow, and I'm perfectly okay with that. But what I actually do is like when I have something that is closer that I'm like, ooh, this is a good one, I will just toggle it to publish it, to the public. So now this one is on my public profile versus all of the ones that I was doing prior. So my public profile, in a way, is more curated. And for the most part, I share almost all of mine out there. It's not for me. I'm not trying to protect my prompts. It's a little bit of my own imposter syndrome, where I don't want someone to judge me on something until I'm ready to. And oftentimes, if you look at my profile, a lot of the ones that I put public are not NFTs. Like I created something great, but it's not the exact emotional state that I wanted. So I'm not going to use it for like repurposing at the moment. I'm not going to use it at the moment, but I still think it has actually, this is a good example. This kid with a like I really wanted this like dynamic of like rainbow, I like neon colors on one side. I wanted tears and emotion on the other side. So it turned out, the image turned out nice, but it wasn't exactly what I had wanted. So I would publish that so it's available for other people to see, other people to vote on, other people to use the script for it. You can go down and see, I used light upscale. You can see what the parent image was of the original that I created. So I kind of curate my public channel. And just for those that are wondering, I believe it is, let's see, view as a visitor. So it's just, I think it's midjourney.com/app/iSocialFans, but we'll put the link in the show notes for people. And what you can do is like, you can go like, this is my public page. So what I'm showing here in the video is what everyone could see. And you'll notice a lot of these images that I haven't even used for anything, and you can feel free to build off them. You can copy them and try to build, and you can dive into what they want. You can add the prompt directly to your own Midjourney. So you'll notice, and you can go back. I mean, I think I have over 5,000 of my images that are public. So if you want to pay the premium, if you are one that you're worried about that, but I'm more from the mode of everyone I think noticed today on just kind of going through the prompts and the things that we talked about on this episode, that there are lots of variants, there's lots of ways to customize this, and to me, I want to teach everybody all the prompts. Feel free to use any of the things, and there are going to be people, like as soon as I go on a YouTube video, I find someone that's doing their Midjourney building completely different than me. Like they're using brackets. They always add weights. They like to do these other, like they just have a completely different style. And it's kind of like giving someone a paintbrush and paint. Like, which do you start with the base level? Do you start with the bottom? Do you start with colors, or do you start with black and white? All of that is personal preference for you, the artist, you, the prompt poet. And I would just tell anybody, don't get discouraged or overwhelmed by how others are doing it. And I think this is where, when you and I were kind of going through it, I was getting overwhelmed because you were like, Brian, how do you use image weights? And like, how do you change these things? And when I would do it and it wouldn't work, well, now I'm like, I'm not even learning. So what I did was I like shelved that and was like, I'm going to get good at some output. And then when I want to become better at like dialing it in, I'm going to increase my knowledge on some of these other components that are out there. And real quick, just to kind of, their help and FAQ and their entire guide, as I mentioned, they just rolled out a brand new documentation page. So previously it looked like just like a Notion document that they had out there, but now they actually have this entire quick start guide, and it'll walk you through how to join the Discord. It's going to give you a lot of the guides for commands and parameters, like you were mentioning. Like, Brian, how do you know which parameters to include? Well, they have an aspect ratio right here where it's going to tell you what are the aspect ratios. And this is why I said this tab is saved into my browser commands, and I will often reference it because I'm like, wait a second, what was the aspect ratio? I don't want it to be too tall, but I also don't want it to be a square, right? So maybe I want it to be 4x5 or 1x1. And I will just say, I give props to the team over there. This guide keeps increasing. And, for those that don't know, it's the most popular art engine out there right now. It's the most popular Discord in all of the Discords. It's also when they do their Ask Me Anything and their QA hours, I've never seen a Discord chat, even at the most, I've been in the biggest Discords in NFT space ever. I've never seen a Discord chat have more people with their hand raised and more people active. And they have a Facebook group, a LinkedIn group, and then multiple fan Facebook groups that are run. So people are, the one Facebook group I joined had 440,000 people in it. I quickly joined.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, because I was like, that's going to overwhelm me. So there are the amount of people that will, and you can post in the discussion channels and be like, why can I not get the clouds to be more dense or whatever? And people are going to give you all kinds of feedback. It's a very, beautiful community in that sense, just for, everyone's out there. And I hope like this kind of like overview and walkthrough kind of gives people an idea. And the part of this that is also nice is like, of all those images that I built, one thing that we hadn't shown yet that I just want to, I want to include in showing everybody is that this new feature that they added, because Stable Diffusion, which is the next kind of most popular. I mean, someone can argue with me which one's more popular. I don't really care which one's more popular. I'm not an investor in either one. But what Stable Diffusion does really well is taking like two images and blending them together and giving you output. And previously with Midjourney, you could do that, but the image needed to be online. So the image had to be, you needed a URL, and what you would do is you would just go, your prompt command, and let's say I wanted to go up here to this one, right? So I could copy the link for the image. So I just go up to an image, copy the actual URL link, hit a space, and then I could add my parameters. So it's going to use that image plus the parameters that I add, right? Neon colors, landscape, and then I'll do AR 3x2 because I want it to be landscape mode, and I can hit that. That used to be the only way for you to do images and image blending until last week. Last week, they added a new feature, which I am obsessed with. And some people aren't going to like it because this is where, like, some people feel like where the stealing of art comes in. But what you're able to do is actually upload images up to 5 into one prompt, and it blends them together. And so here's my ninja hack that I'm using that I love, is that if I build 2 different versions of one image that I want to put out, but like, oh, I like the neon colors in this one, but wow, the guitar in this one is more depth. I'm going to build both of them, upscale them to a place that I like them, download them to my computer, add them in here, and then hit render, and then get to see what that is. So I'll add 2 that I had done previously, and I mentioned the guitar one because the guitar one is one that and you can add anything, right? Any image, and you know, this is where
I like that.
This is where I tell people, add images that you own and have the rights to. Let's respect how this all works. I know some people are going to say that's very naive of me since we're using AI, but I believe AI, that you'll notice all of these things. We're crafting an output that is not just copying what is out there on the internet. But like, let's say I want to use a guitar image that I really love, but I want to combine it. I want to add some more neon variants to it. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go in and use some of the AI art that I previously created because I got a collection, and one of the pieces that I did in that collection was an entire neon landscape. If everybody remembers back in our Shades of ADHD one, or our time capsule, I did one where it allowed me to create this neon kind of background and the neon ocean. And so I'm going to add that one as kind of the second variable here, and I'm going to drop it in. And so we're going to have a guitar. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use the astronaut one because this will give us a little bit more variance. So rather than me having just
wow,
I have the guitar with neon colors, but it has some depth. And then I have a very neon astronaut one. It's actually one that's hanging up above my head that I have printed. And then what I can do is I can add up to 5. So you can use 5 images. But what they just added yesterday is I actually get to choose the dimensions of the output, which I love.
I see.
So I just hit landscape, and I just hit enter. And now there's no additional prompt, right? It's using version 4. It's using landscape, but it's taking those 2 images and trying its best to blend what it would think that you would want out of it. And I will tell you, I got some of my best results in the last 48 hours working 2 of my own images that I created in AI, putting them back in, getting an output, and then customizing that one. So that's like ultimately, like, I think will end up being part of my creation process. And while that one's rendering, I can kind of just, it might be to show here. I can show one of the ones that, and I have different channels trying to organize, but just like everything, things are organized for a little bit, and then they quickly go unorganized. But like this image here, this is a great one. Right? I built a image of a person's face, and I wanted to have this stare and crystal blue eyes. I also built this paper mache Chuck Taylor Converse shoe. Well, once both outputs were what I liked, downloaded both of them, blended them back in, and it actually created the output after a lot of tweaking. that I then edited. I edited some of the depth and the color, changed the shadow on my iPad, and that was actually today's AI 365 piece. Was a piece
Oh,
that I
wow.
used from those two variables. And so let's see. Let's see if that. Where did I have that one? I think it was in. Yeah, this is
I'm not
another
sure.
problem. I don't know where it was either. Oh, it might be at the bottom. Oh, nope, here. So, oh yeah, here it is, right here. So these two are rendering. I will say we're recording this really pretty much prime time, happy hour. So it is, you know, the engine, even at fast, it runs a little slower when there's so many people on it. But for the most part, you're still
Right.
going to get an image done, you know, 3 to 5 minutes. And this is exporting. This is using that existing one, right? So the first one that we're going to see render is actually this image here of like the
Oh,
guy
it was that one.
sitting at his desk, just the image, and then I put a prompt after it, right? So I said neon color landscape. So if you notice, it took the desk, the guy in the chair, but added this really cool landscape in neon color.
Yeah.
It still has the reflection from the water that was in the previous image, but it's now adjusted. And what's cool is I can now use those same things we talked about at the beginning. U1, U2, I can add variations to this. I can re-roll it. So that was using the old school image prompt of using the link. And what I will say is the image is not weighted as heavily in that case. So it's using the image, but it's also equally weighting my prompts. In the other example that we use where I'm uploading the images, there's no other prompt. It's just image to image comparison. Right. So I have noticed a pretty big difference because I could have just taken the links from both of the ones I created, the shoe and the person's eye, and put them side by side. But I will tell you the output was nothing close to the blended version of them. So the difference is build based on these as a baseline versus blend these two together based on two like kind of concrete outputs. So just from like some clarity side on that. But that's actually a pretty cool example where I took two things that didn't really
that
make
is.
sense and brought them together. So that's where I think you don't have to be frustrated if your output, because you can build out some really cool images. Then you're like, okay, now I want to tweak it. Now I want to add, you know, maybe I want to add this person or I want to add this thing. But just know also, you know, once you're tweaking it, now you're putting it back in the AI engine. You have to go back and rework it. Like one of the things I've noticed is I get it to like 90%, but I want to make sure there's footprints. That 90% to 100 when I want to add footprints might be 3 more hours worth of tweaking and testing. Because, okay, how does it receive footprints? Where in the prompt should footprints be in there? Oh my goodness, the footprints look like footprints from a giant. Well, now I need to say tiny footprints, and now the footprints aren't connected to the beach. So like just know that like that's part of the creation process that I really like. And I will say like right now I probably have 12 to 14 different ones that aren't at a final state, but they were ones that I was kind of reworking and tweaking. And then I'll go back when I feel like, you know, the creative juice to them, or I want to go back in and figure them out. But you'll notice right now, the last kind of rendering we'll show for this video, it's adding, you know, it had, remember this was the astronaut one, which was one of the most popular ones that I minted as an NFT. And then the guitar that was neon. And it's the upload. So this is their newest blend engine, brand new feature that just came out with Midjourney just this week alone. And here it is, the output. And so it removed the astronaut out of it, which I think is really cool. It kept the neon kind of outer space atmosphere. And these are the 4 versions. And like for me, this version 3 is pretty darn amazing with you know, outer space.
Yeah, I like how the clouds are through the
and it's kind of like burning through. And so what's cool on that is I can just go, okay, well now I like the combination of those two. Let's build on that. And then from there we build. I did upscale 3, and now I can go through and build it. And then if I want to be like, you know what, I like that, but I still want to tweak the thing. Remember, I can just turn on remix mode, hit the variance 3, add to the prompt, and build on that way as well. So that's kind of, I think that's probably, we probably overwhelmed everybody and went as far in depth. But
that was a lot. That was a lot.
A lot, but it's also a taste of, you can put in just words and play with the output, which is like beautiful. But you can also really craft and dial in and tweak. And I will say, like, that image with the shoe, the one that I put out today, and just so everyone knows, my vision for that initially was empathy. Walking, how do I help people understand empathy in an image that says we need to walk in someone's shoes, but we need to see what they saw walking in their shoes. So that was my image. I was like, I want to create an image that represents someone having to see what someone sees if we walked in their shoes, so that I can, promote empathy. And what I realized was, like, walking in shoes and like eyes, that was just way too complex. So instead I built out a really cool shoe, the really cool eye that I wanted, blended them together, and then built it. But I will tell you that NFT that I posted up today for sale, it's up on Foundation. I'm doing one every single day. It was easily 5 hours of creating the shoe, creating the eye, rendering it. And then I will tell you the output that I got from Midjourney, it had like this shoelace that was really long. It had a long shadow that I didn't really like. It also didn't have like the color depth. I wanted to layer like the eye. I wanted to really be a little bit more prominent. So I wanted the eye to kind of improve in brightness. So once it was on my iPad, it was probably 45 minutes of me dialing in, tweaking, adjusting the brightness on different layers of that one before I put it out, right? So although it was like, and I love the output is, output is exactly what I like. It's even better than what I envisioned, and it portrays the emotion exactly of seeing, of that, of seeing what, someone's eyes. So for anyone, that was listening to this via podcast audio and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I survived this far. But if you want to watch the video, we'll put the video up there on YouTube. And we will talk, we talk AI with Kim Gape, who is an amazing AI artist. She's going to co-host with me each month to talk more AI. And we're going to try to integrate, some of this in there, because I believe you don't even have to sell these as NFTs. They can be used as your social graphics for promoting your NFT project. They can be used on the banner of your website. And I want to give a shout out to two different people. Becky, who runs Girls Night over on on Twitter Spaces. We're going to try to get Becky to join the podcast. She also is the lead community manager at Crypto Chicks. She bought one of my my time blindness NFTs, and then she made that the banner image of her Medium article. And I actually had someone send me a screenshot today and said, Brian, I was just scrolling Medium and I saw your NFT art. And I was like, oh, how cool is that?
That's awesome.
And then a shout out to Travi as well. Travi bought one of the neon boombox NFT that I made, and he made that his podcast logo. So his podcast logo, because he bought the NFT, is now the boombox over there, and it's with Travi fired up on the blockchain. So those are just two great examples of people that were supporting, bought the NFTs, and now are using them in their content, not as an NFT, but to support their Web3 NFT journey as a whole.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for walking me and everyone through some of the basics of Midjourney and AI art exploration. I'm really inspired to try again, to kind of come back to Midjourney and see what I can do to create. I don't have any necessarily aspirations of like putting it out an NFT or building a website, but just the act of creation. I was seeing some glimpses of how it could be really fun and creative and just like an outlet. And so thank you. Maybe we can do it again sometime and talk about some of the other things like image weights or image prompts or some of the other things that we didn't get to today.
For sure. And for anyone that's watching the video, just leave your questions in the comments on the video. If you're listening to the podcast, just DM us on any of the channels. We're on every social channel, NFT 365 podcast, and let us know, like, hey, Brian, I would love your take on this. Or Brian, you told us Midjourney. Why didn't you do Stable Diffusion? I actually used Stable Diffusion this morning for something I was working on. I also use another tool called Scenario GG that I really like for creating multiples of a very similar image, and maybe something that is in the works, a collection of mine that I've been working on for a while. But yeah, please throw those questions out there. If you like this, let me know. Also, let me know if you listen on the podcast and you're like, Brian, it was too much detailed, too much fine print. I couldn't really follow along listening because I don't know. And honestly, for the most part, I try my best to relate this so it works if you're watching, but also if it works if you don't. But if it was too much, maybe we'll just do these for YouTube videos and we'll talk more, holistically or at a higher level on the podcast. But I won't know unless you're willing to give feedback. And that's my ask for everybody here. So Delphykat, thanks so much for jumping on and kind of narrating and helping us through. I'm sure it helped a lot of people. And until next episode, everyone, press the damn button. I really do. I feel like this whole AI art component could help us from a mental health journey, unlock a piece of creativity. I mean, 8 months ago, 7 months ago, I didn't think I would create images anywhere for anyone. And now my daughters come in my office and they see, artwork that I've printed out with people using them across the board. So don't say that you can't, don't say that never. And have some fun, play with it. And remember, perfection's a fairy tale and control is an illusion. Just press the damn button. Cheers, everybody.